Hi, I'm Tammy Renee, and welcome to Survivor Shift, moving from surviving to thriving. Today I have as my guest Myra Marangi, one of my good friends. She's passionate about exercise. She teaches a lot of different exercise classes. She's a substitute teacher and is passionate about helping the kids that she teaches. And today she's going to share with us a little bit about her journey from going from a troubled childhood to thriving energetically in a life that she loves. So Myra, first, can you tell us a little bit about where you started, like your childhood and the kind of difficulties that you had there?
Sure. We're a family of 4 children. I am the youngest. I was also the only one that was born here in the United States. My family comes from the Philippines, and so they journeyed over about 3 years before I was born. When my next in line sister was born, and then they traveled here, and I was born in California, Oakland, on a base that no longer exists today. So my father was in the United States Navy from 1917, because my father was born in 1899.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And my mom was born in 1936, so she was significantly younger. And we decided to move to Reno, but I was born on the base in Oakland because that was the closest base. So my father, because he was as old as he was, my mother worked. He was retired from the Navy at this point, but money was always a struggle with the 4 children plus those 2, so we were a family of 6. And new immigrants to the United States. Jobs were hard to come by. My mother was not educated, and college educated, and my father was just in the service. So being retired, she ended up taking 2 full-time positions and worked most of those jobs most of my life. And the hours of so supervision for us as a family was pretty non-existent. So if you leave a whole family to their own devices all day long, unsupervised, you have a start of chaos, I guess. So my mom worked from 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and then she'd take a little break, and then her job would start around 4:30 or 5, and then she wouldn't be done with that shift until 11:30 in the evening. And she'd come home and then start over again the next day, and she was off Thursdays and Fridays.
So was your dad not really very present, even though was he at home with you guys?
Yes.
But he just wasn't able because he was so much older.
Right.
So
right.
he wasn't able to really interact a lot.
Right.
Okay.
That is correct. And he didn't drive, but we lived in Reno, close to downtown Reno. And when I was with my dad, we walked a lot to shop, to go downtown for whatever reason. So I have a lot of memories of just hanging out with my dad, walking around. And my memories with my mom were Thursdays and Fridays, because those are the 2 days that she had off from both jobs. And it was hit or miss. Sometimes you didn't want to be home Thursdays and Fridays, because those are the days that she'd scream and yell, because she had a hard time with us. My siblings were older teenagers, and they were busy with school and their lives, and not a lot of time to help out at home. And my father, as I got older, he got older, and they called it being senile back then, but it was definitely the start of dementia, which was appropriate for his age, because he was 79, 80 at that point, where he lost all memories of who we were. So that was hard. But being young, I just took it. That was our set of circumstances. And siblings spent a lot of time at school, and during the day I would spend time at home because I was so young, 5 years old at this point, 4 or 5 years old. And I remember being left at home a lot with my dad, and my mom was always at work during the day. And I was pretty much every day watch TV. It was pretty, not a whole lot of activity, I guess, for me during the day, being that young, and my father being so elderly at that point. So it got to a point where he was completely, he started cooking things like oranges in the peel. And he just started the early start of his dementia. He would attempt to either cook or clean or something, and it was always the opposite outcome of dinner. Really wasn't edible at that point, or and there were points where he had lost it. The point where he totally lost his memory came to where he was leaving in the middle of the night, and we couldn't, my mom couldn't be there for him because she had to restore her energy by sleeping at night, which is what people do. But it did get to a point where we had to contain him into a room and had the lock accessible from the outside of the door so we could keep him contained and safe. So I remember that too. I remember being confused about the sadness of that because he was not free to roam around the house because it was fear of safety at this point.
So mostly it was neglect.
Mostly it was neglect.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And lack of direction, it sounds like.
Yes.
Really.
Yes. Yeah. Left to my own devices. TV was like my best friend. I controlled that TV. I remember I controlled it so much that when my siblings got home for the evenings and they tried to turn the channel, I would scream, bloody horror. And, and that was just the way it was. So it was a lot of, not really selective neglect. It was definitely a lot of neglect because being at home by myself with TV and, a couple snacks here or there and some food, my mom would cook quite a bit on Thursdays and Fridays and then save everything, leftovers in the refrigerator. And we would literally live off of leftovers for the entire week with, give or take, maybe a night or two out with Kentucky Fried Chicken or some sort of fast food.
Yeah. So something like that.
Yes.
So it didn't really set you up with much of a foundation then.
No.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about, I know we've known each other for years and you've talked about some of the trauma that you have experienced as a young child.
Yes.
And going into your teenage years. Are you comfortable with sharing some of that?
Yes, for sure. When my mom was gone in the evenings, my siblings were gone too. I was left home a lot with my dad, and we always slept on a pull-out couch on the living room sofa, basically, and that's where we had slept. And that pretty much came. I remembered it literally growing up as a child, but there was a point in time, and specifically 5 years old keeps coming to mind, where I had memories of my father trying to have his hands in my underwear and doing things and being on top of me and not really understanding what was happening. I have vivid recollections, or I can recall some of the memories, but I just know that I didn't feel right, I guess, while they were happening. Mm-hmm. And so I only remember once that had happened, and I pretty much filed it in my memory and went on with life. I didn't disclose that I wasn't going to school at that time, so I didn't disclose it to anybody at that time when it had happened around that time. I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell siblings, nothing. So fast forward back into when I was still too young to attend school. I couldn't attend kindergarten because back then it was half day, just during the mornings or in the afternoons. Either way, my mom couldn't pick me up from school or drop me off. It was afternoon kindergarten. So I had to be watched by somebody else, which was this family friend. And because he worked nights, he slept during the days, and I would be at his home, which was also in Reno, during my days. And I just remember being a creative kid, going outside around the perimeter of the house and skipping, or I talked to myself a lot. I had imaginary friends, whatever, because I was by myself a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember there were weird things that had happened at night between his children. At that point, he only had 2 daughters and a son. And he was single at the time. And then my brother, I don't recall a lot of memories with him there, but my two sisters, older sisters, they were about 9 and 10 years older than I was at that time. And just a lot of activity, happening at night. The early, just strange feelings that I would have in the middle of the night, people shifting all around bedrooms, things like that was just very weird. Things that I'd witnessed sleeping on the couch,
Right.
At night, on the weekends when my mom had to work weekends. And for whatever reason, my scattered memories and nobody ever told me anything. So I just know that we did stay the night there a couple nights a week. And then later on, hearing stories as I got older that family friend had actually molested repeatedly several times both of my sisters.
Oh.
And one of my sisters had confronted him later on as an adult. She went to his house and, why did you do that to me?
Yeah.
She literally peppered him with questions about everything. I'm not sure how that turned out or even why she felt the need to do that, but she literally confronted him, and then she went on and just had a hard time with life after that. And then my oldest sister never really faced that demon. She pretty much covered up a lot of that trauma and the way we grew up with substances.
Right.
So, and made wrong friend choices and just made poor decisions after that.
Right.
And then I guess that was pretty much just being left again with a demented, literally in the mind father, who my mom was never there. I don't know if men have needs. Basically, was he trying to do that for me? Was I a replacement at that point? I don't know. Those are just questions that I had later on in life. Like, why would somebody ever do that? I can't imagine my own husband to this day crossing that very, very, I don't know, present line of trying to have sexual relations with his daughters. I can't see that.
Right.
So because I had to process all of this information later on as an adult, it interfered with a lot of things. My mom was diligent about supporting our family in the provider role, which was to have a roof over your head and clothes on your back and car to drive and food on the table, all of the basic necessities. She basically handed me a $20 bill every Monday and said, be conservative, and then and then that $20 bill increased later on as I got older and whatever. And so she was always good about that. My mom was not a conversationalist, so we never really had conversations like this. She was very, I think, introverted in the sense where she just kept everything inside to herself and never really asked questions about life, never checked in emotionally. So there was a lot of emotional neglect. I got a lot of knowledge from TV shows, growing up. And it wasn't until I was in elementary school and had other friends and was invited to their homes and witnessed how their lives were and how stark difference of their home life compared to my home life. And then that caused me to question, how come we're not close? Like, how come we don't have family dinners? How come you're never home? How come I don't have a mom? And I literally remember, might have been third grade, 9, 10 years old. I wrote a letter to my mom about the differences I noticed, comparing and contrasting with my home life compared to some of my best friends and their home lives. And I even had a best friend to this day where she had a single mom growing up. She had a stepdad, but then they divorced. But then her mom still was an emotionally supporting mother and was there for her, cooked dinners for her, did all the things, and just provided that family life, even as a single mom. And I remember asking my mom these questions, and I was thinking in my heart, okay, I'm sure we're going to talk about this.
Right.
We never talked about it. So it was like, so that was always hanging in the back of my mind why I was never, she just didn't speak openly, but she was just like locked down, never really spoke. So that I just started making terrible choices in my friends. And I had another friend who also didn't have supervision, a lot of supervision at home because her dad was working. She was raised by a single dad. And I just remember her and I having a lot of freedom, like too much freedom, getting into trouble in the weekends and the evenings or whatever, and just being destructive and whatever. And then of course, middle school also is the introduction of other harsher substances, marijuana and like drinking. And like I said, I was just with the wrong groups of friends who had the same types of freedoms. And we just had way too much unsupervised visiting and doing adult type things that we weren't supposed to be doing. So of course that skewed my entire, I always wanted to be a functioning member of society, wanted to finish high school, wanted to, have a career and do everything and raise a family, maybe early in my teenage years, I wanted to have a family. Later on in life I had a different view of how harsh the world was. And this was in the 80s, right? So it affected all of my choices. I just kind of went on, did my own thing. I also had a lot of inpatient hospital stays when I was younger, completely neglected that. Making wrong choices, ODing on whatever it was that I was taking. I think it was LSD at that time. Had a suicidal attempt. That was my first in-hospital stay. And then the second was overdosing on the LSD and being 14 and being downtown Reno by myself in the middle of the night.
Oh, wow.
And so that was really traumatic. And then the third hospital stay was at that point I was introduced to methamphetamines, which was back known as like speed or whatever they called it back then. And I was only 15 at that point, and I was trying to live a clean life, trying to make better decisions, finding better friends that would support and help me make that transition. Like my family kind of knew, but they didn't know what to do with me. My mom was still in that sphere of working, provide. So I didn't really try to bug her about it too much, but I became anorexic because I felt like I couldn't keep my weight down. I had body dysmorphia. I probably was a whole 90 pound, not even a buck at that point. and I was young, I was 16, and I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know how to control. I felt like everything was swirling out of control, but that was the one thing I could control. Was my appetite. And, still haunts me to this day, but it's a coping mechanism. Right. I understand that now.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was hospitalized for that. That was I learned a lot of life skills. It was actually called life skills. And I did learn life skills. I mean, they gave me a binder and said, here you go, here's this. This is the group that we're going to today. Everything was very structured. Wow. It was things that I was really craving, how to live a balanced life. And that meant emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and what did I say? What I'm missing? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and intellectually. Right. So it was this binder, 3-ring binder that had, here's what you do to be healthy here. Here's what you do to be healthy here. And I got into exercise. So that's when exercise really changed my physical, I guess, outlook on life. I was able to feel, now I recognize them as endorphins. I felt better mentally. It checked so many boxes for me. Just walking, jogging. I used to roller skate back then. And I took my first aerobics class and I thought, oh, this is like dance. Yeah. But you're moving and it's repetitive, and that's way I could pick it up, easily. And then I loved dancing. since I was a child that we used to dance in the streets where I grew up in Reno, and just people come out with their very loud boom boxes, and we would just play music and just dance literally till it was dark.
Yeah, there's freedom in that.
Yes.
I mean, when I was little, I didn't watch Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah. I watched American Bandstand.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
Sang and danced.
Soul Train was afterwards. Yeah.
I get that though. I get that. There's freedom in dancing and in music. That's hard to find other places.
Right. And so it's like an escape.
Yeah, it is totally an escape. Yeah. So it sounds like you were really in a dark place, but somewhere along the line, knowing you as I know you now, you had a survivor shift. You had something that moved you from that pit into a more, I don't know if productive is the right word, but a place where you can thrive and build a life. So tell me about that shift.
That's pretty much when my husband came into the picture. During that time, I was staying, my third hospital stay at Life Skills. It was around Christmas time, and then I was able to get out before Christmas. I remember that. And then I remember just on my own trying to live this clean, better life, make better decisions, make better choices. But then New Year's came around and I hung out with an older crowd and they were like, we're going to party, da 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 da. And I said, no, thank you. I think I'm going to spend a nice quiet evening by myself. I was 16. Okay. Wow. And I hung around college people at this point. I just made the decision. I'm going to, stay home, journal. And that's what I did. And I remember as far as boyfriends and things like that, I always had really poor choices in the boys. And I felt like emotionally I needed more support, or I was willing to give that support as well. Right. And tired of being stepped on, I had an idea to, I will make a list of my ideal guy. And I literally made a list of, he will be muscular. He will be muscular. He will have green eyes. He will be college educated or college bound. He will be like a productive member of society. He won't be a drain on his mom, or, he won't, basically, I wrote all of the ideals. And then I literally prayed into the new year. So like from 11:57 until whatever, past midnight, I prayed heavily about finding this guy. And that was January 1st of 1990. And about 2 months later, I had a job. One of my first jobs as a 16-year-old was at Circus. And I worked in the midway where, it's entertainment for the little ones. And we had carnival type games and it was real fun. And there was a security guard and he looked really great in a uniform. And you could see his shoulder muscles popping out from his uniform. And I thought, and he just looked very strong and confident. That's what I was looking for. All of the qualities that I was lacking at that time, I was looking for in a mate. It just felt good being with someone who had a semblance of light. Right. And I felt like he really cared about my concern, because one night I was really late returning from work and he had called all the hospitals and was looking for me. And I had to make up all these lies because I went back and started doing crazy things again. And then it was just that one time, but I made up this ridiculous set of lies. I remember trying to justify why I was out so late with my friends. And then just that one little slip up of a night out. And granted, I was still young, 16, and we've just been together ever since. And he's just been really patient, king of patience. But I always felt the love, the nurturing, that came from this guy. I just didn't think it was possible that someone could care enough for that. I didn't see that modeled growing up. I saw it in TV shows, but I didn't see it. To be able to experience it, I think, made me feel worthy of being able to, hey, I could be somebody who is lovable and capable. Remember those little red pins when you were little? I am lovable and capable.
Yeah.
It was like ILAC or something. I am lovable and capable. Yeah, ILAC. Literally remember that. These little buttons that we used to wear when we were in elementary school. And I just remember feeling that, like connecting the dots, going, oh, if you feel lovable and capable, that's powerful. And I wanted to have more of that. Fast forwarding a little bit, we had already had Anthony, and we were taking turns going to different churches, I guess, at that point, because growing up Catholic, I had always known there was a God. I knew that there was Jesus, but they were all one and the same.
Right.
And God was this mystical being that you prayed to, and like a genie, you rub it, and hopefully it'll come true. And that's the childlike faith that I was shown. So my mom did teach me that. This one particular year, Anthony was about a year or 2 years old, and we were going to church with his dad at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Carson. And I remember the feeling that I had in the chapel that day. I felt like there's a lot of love here. You know, I felt that there was a lot of light here, and there's a lot of people talking, and people are not quiet, and they're not regimenting these prayers that were said over again, and like it was a community. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And then I noticed that there was one little, like a single African American over there sitting, and I thought, wow, I'm not the darkest person. I'm not the darkest person in the room. And for whatever reason, growing up in a suburban type like neighborhood, and where my mom moved us later on in Sparks, I was always the darkest of everybody, of all my friends, which were like fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, or brunette, or whatever. And I just remember feeling comfortable in my element. And then from there on, you know, joined the church after much trepidation. Getting to the waters of baptism was a whole nother story, but that's that shift. So spiritual shift. I guess I had a lot of shifts, but they were like segmented in different areas of my life. So that was the shift. I wanted to be better. I met women who were good, who I thought were good mothers or good wives to their husbands. I met other husbands who were good husbands to their wives. And I thought, yeah, we're having this and we're doing this now, and we're going to figure this out. Right.
And there you go. You know, I think you hit the nail on the head with there's many shifts. Mm-hmm. I think there's a specific shift usually that takes us from one path, right? Or where we're kind of just not going anywhere and spiraling in a bad place. So there's an initial shift that helps us to kind of start moving forward. Mm-hmm. But you're right, it's a sequence of shifts, because I think once we make that first shift and we accept the changes, you know, and we decide that's what we want, right, then that opens us up to more growth and more ability. Right. More ability. I think my favorite thing that I had never heard about, that I am lovable and capable. I really love that, because I think an important part of our healing is having the opportunity to give, to do, you know, and it's because we find our worth in being able to express ourselves, whatever unique ways that we express ourselves. Right. So I know that you are a very capable woman, and you do a lot of great things. So I don't know, I just feel like I want you to share with us, if you can, about how experiencing life and learning and making those changes, how it has helped you along your path.
Well, with those, just talking to you today is illuminating in so many ways, because in order to shift, so I guess I can relate this in dance. When you're shifting your weight from one foot to another, you usually have to step off, or leave something, shift your weight to one side, which means you're, as opposed to having 2 feet on the ground and shifting your weight to 1 foot and living this, you have to leave something up in the air or leave something behind. Yes. So literally, I left the first shift when I met my husband, or my boyfriend at the time. I left a lot of friends behind who were traveling a different route. Not that they were all evil devil people or anything. They just had different goals in life that I had. So my husband was going in that direction, so I left that part of me behind. I also did the same when I shifted spiritually, when I gained a whole new religion and a whole new way of life. I had to, again, leave some other people behind, leave some ways behind, leave some clothes behind, leave some substances behind. A shift is literally when you think you're going in the direction and then you shift. It's like having a fork in the road and you got to make a decision. You're going this way or that way. Well, you have to shift. You have to make a choice. Anytime I try to make an empowered decision or to like better myself along the way, I've always had to leave something behind or completely substitute something for another. You know what I mean?
Right. So if you have one message for the people that are watching today, what would it be?
To know that you're a child of God. I didn't know that. When that was revealed to me when I was 23 years old, where we were singing a song, I am a child of God, I remember those words like resonating like in my soul, in my like core being. I was like, am I really? And when you feel, that's a shift, by the way.
Oh,
that's a shift. Because if you're a child of God, well, God put you here on earth to have a mission or whatever it is. I didn't get that until I was way older. In fact, it came in my, when I started teaching Zumba, when I started teaching dance. I mean, literally as a cardio fitness option in a gym, and to be able to feel that joy. And I remember the training that day. I was in Detroit, Michigan, and I thought, I heard the music and I thought, this feels like I was, I don't know, born to do this, I guess. And I thought I heard the speakers coming out and I could just do what I love. And it was amazing because I felt it. I felt like, wow, is this what I'm supposed to do? That I've been doing that. And then, teaching school and teaching dance at school, being able to combine everything has been a game changer for me, because I was able to find out that, yeah, I have some worth to be able to have this gift, this talent, and to be able to share that freely and not be a business or whatever. Just, it's because it's part of me. It's an extension of my being. It's an extension of my joy that I'm literally handing to you on a silver platter. And please partake, because it brought me joy.
So it sounds like you understanding and accepting that you're a child of God opens you up to really who you are and the gifts that you have to share.
Yes.
I love that. And I love that also you being able to nurture your children, right? So they can have a taste of what it is.
Right.
That they are children.
Well, you taught me that. Both you and our friend Kim taught us that that's mothering.
Yeah.
Something that I never really realized until I became a mother. So that's like a huge chunk of my life that I grew up without knowing who I was, knowing that I had all of these things inside to be able to contribute. I had no idea. That was very freeing, I guess.
Yeah, I think it is. It's freeing to be able to be ourselves. And if we really understand God, I think a lot of people don't understand his nature, but that he loves us and he's blessed us to be able to find strength and joy and understanding in the experiences that we go through.
Yes, pretty much.
Thank you, Myra, so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
I'm Tammy Renee, and this has been Survivorship.